its height, the British Empire spanned a quarter of the globe, ruling over millions of people across continents and cultures. Its reach extended from the Americas to Africa, from Asia to the farthest islands of the Pacific. Its true strength, however, lay not in its land, but in its mastery of the sea, a vast, ever-changing highway that connected the empire's farthest corners. The empire's lifeblood was its ships, connecting distant colonies, moving goods, and projecting power across oceans. Every port bustled with activity as ships arrived and departed, carrying the hopes and ambitions of a nation. Without the ocean, Britain was just an island. With it became a global force, its influence radiating outward on the tides. This transformation began with sailors, not soldiers, as ordinary men braved the unknown in search of opportunity and adventure. And with wooden ships braving unknown waters, facing storms, treacherous currents, and the constant threat of the unknown. Britain wasn't always dominant. Spain and the Netherlands once ruled the waves, their mighty fleets challenging British ambitions at every turn. To rise, Britain built a navy that could defend its shores and challenge rivals, forging a maritime force that would become the envy of the world. Soon, British ships could reach every corner of the world, exploring, trading, and sometimes conquering new lands. The government invested heavily, developing new shipbuilding and navigation technologies, from stronger hulls to more accurate maps and instruments. Naval bases from Gibraltar to Singapore allowed British ships to operate far from home, the sea became Britain's highway, linking every part of its empire, making distant lands feel closer and more connected than ever before. Every colony, from American plantations and Caribbean sugar islands to Indian tea gardens and the spice markets of the East, was connected by shipping lanes that carried people, ideas, and goods. The Royal Navy transported troops, blockaded enemies, and protected trade, ensuring the empire's lifelines remained open. The merchant fleet carried goods, cotton, tea, sugar, and wealth back to Britain, fueling its economy and transforming its cities into centers of commerce. The empire's story is inseparable from its relationship with the sea, a bond forged by courage, innovation, and ambition. Maritime power was the foundation of British dominance, shaping the world in ways that still echo today. The ocean was not just a barrier, it was the empire's greatest asset, a source of endless opportunity and challenge. This is the story of how Britain used the sea to build the largest empire in history, and how the tides of fortune shaped a nation's destiny. Britain's naval supremacy was forged in conflict and ambition, born from a nation surrounded by water and driven by the need to protect its shores and expand its influence. The defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, England could defend itself at sea, marking a turning point that inspired generations of seafarers and leaders. But it was the brutal Anglo-Dutch wars that truly shaped the Royal Navy, forcing it to adapt, innovate, and become a formidable force on the world stage. Facing fierce competition, Britain professionalized its navy, investing heavily in new ship designs, skilled sailors, and a robust organizational structure that set it apart from its rivals. Figures like Samuel Pepys reformed logistics and finances, ensuring ships were supplied, sailors paid, and the fleet could operate far from home for extended periods. The Navy became a permanent, disciplined force in Britain's own walls, standing ready to defend the nation and project power abroad. Sea power was both defense and offense, allowing Britain to attack rivals and protect its cemented British control of the seas for a century, making Admiral Nelson a national hero and the Navy a symbol of British power. With rivals defeated, Britain blazed the oceans, protected trade, and suppressed piracy, ensuring safe passage for millions of people across the globe. The Navy even played a key role in abolishing the slave trade, patrolling the seas to intercept slave ships and free thousands of captives. The Navy was more than a navy, it was the enforcer of the British flag, projecting power and maintaining peace in distant waters. This era became known as the Pax Britannica, the British Empire, a time when the Royal Navy's presence deterred ships were the embodiment of British power. Massive, complex, and built from thousands of oak trees, these wooden giants were more than just vessels. They were floating symbols of national pride and technological achievement, representing the very heart of Britain's maritime strength. Ships of the line carried over 100 cannons and hundreds of men, floating fortresses ready for battle. Their thunderous broadsides could decide the fate of nations, and their presence alone was often enough to deter the invaders. Building these ships was a national effort, training forests and employing skilled workers. Shipyards bustled with activity as carpenters, blacksmiths, and sailmakers toiled day and night to meet the Navy's insatiable demand. Life aboard was harsh, cramped quarters, poor food, disease, and strict discipline. Sailors endured long months at sea, facing storms, enemy fire, and the constant threat of illness, all for king and country. Yet, sailors formed effective teams, united by necessity and pride. Camaraderie and shared hardship forged bonds that made the Royal Navy a formidable force. Naval dominance meant security. No enemy could invade if the Royal Navy controlled the channel. The fleet's constant vigilance kept Britain safe from invasion and allowed the nation to project power far beyond its shores. The Navy protected Britain's merchant fleet, the economic lifeblood of the empire. Convoys sailed under the watchful eyes of the warships, ensuring goods and wealth flowed safely home. Trade and naval power reinforced each other. Wealthy trade funded more ships, and the Navy protected that trade. This cycle of prosperity and protection fueled Britain's rise. Taxes and imported goods fueled government coffers, giving Britain an edge over rivals. The steady flow of revenue allowed for investment in new ships, technology, and infrastructure. While others struggled to fund their fleets, Britain's booming trade sustained a permanent navy. This unmatched naval presence became the backbone of the empire's security and expansion. Sea power and economic power were inseparable, driving the empire's growth. The Royal Navy's reach extended across the globe, connecting distant colonies and markets. The wooden walls of England made Britain a global superpower, shaping the course of history and leaving a legacy that endures to this day. At its core, the British Empire was a commercial machine. Naval control made global trade possible, bringing sugar, tobacco, spices, and cotton to Britain. These goods, once luxuries, became everyday staples, transforming British life. Plantations and colonies supplied raw materials. British factories processed and sold them for profit. The Industrial Revolution fueled demand for new markets, and the colonies became captive consumers. The East India Company exemplified how trade led to political and military control. Its private army ruled vast parts of India, and its wealth shaped British politics. The empire's global trade network enriched merchants and bankers, but often at the expense of local industries. Maritime trade was the foundation of imperial power, a web of ships, goods, and money circling the globe. The empire's reach was built on commerce enforced by the Navy. The British Empire transformed lives across the world. In the colonies, British rule brought new laws, language, and infrastructure, often to serve imperial interests. Some local elites benefited, but many lost land and resources in time. Indigenous populations in separate colonies were displaced in large numbers. The empire was a patchwork of different systems of experience. In Britain, the empire was a source of pride and identity, the life of national security, maintaining its dominance was costly, requiring a vast century and beyond. India was the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. British control began with the East India Company's trading posts, expanding through conquest and alliances. After the 1857 rebellion, the British Raj was established, making India central to imperial strategy. India provided raw materials, a vast market for British goods, and soldiers for British wars. Railways, law, and education transformed India from mainly to serve British interests. English became the language of administration, creating a new class of Western educated Indians. British rule brought modernization to India, but also subjugation and economic exploitation. The relationship was complex, having British Empire redrew the world's map, often ignoring local realities. In Africa, colonial borders cut across ethnic and tribal lines, sowing seeds of future conflict. Mapping was an act of power, naming places, claiming territory, and imposing new identities. Settler colonies like Canada and Australia inherited British systems and evolved into self-governing dominions. Elsewhere, direct rule left behind fragile states with artificial borders. When independence came, new nations struggled with the legacy of colonial boundaries and institutions. The modern world map is a product of the imperial era, with Britain playing a leading role. The challenge for former colonies was forging identity within inherited structures. The empire's lines on the map still shape global politics today. Managing a global empire drove British innovation in technology and science. The electric telegraph and submarine cables connected London to its farthest colonies, revolutionizing communication. Steamships and the Suez Canal made travel and trade faster and more reliable. These advances tightened Britain's grip on its empire, shrinking the world. Empire was also a cultural exchange. Britain exported language, sports, and customs, but was changed in return. Words, tools, and ideas from the colonies entered British life. Scientific exploration flourished, gardens at the center of the world's botanical research. Plants like rubber and quinine were transplanted across the empire. Museums filled with imperial treasures shaped British future. The empire's influence was technological, cultural, and scientific, complex and far-reaching. The British Empire's era ended in the 20th century as wars, independence movements, and global shifts made it unsustainable. Former colonies gained independence, but the empire's legacy endures. English became the global language, and legal and political systems spread worldwide. The Commonwealth remains a faint echo of imperial connections, yet the legacy includes conflict, inequality, and borders that still cause tension. Economic structures and memories of exploitation shape post-colonial nations. The empire's story is one of transformation, contradiction, and enduring influence. Understanding its history is key to understanding our world today.